Well, good morning again, everyone, and welcome back to our second stream of the day. Second stream, second coffee. No questions need to be asked. So my name is Nathan Hofer, and I am the Director of Campus Operations here for Lost&Found. And this 9 o'clock session, I'm super excited for. We're going to spend some time talking to some of the folks who are really instrumental in the formation and founding of Lost&Found. So I'm going to bring them into the stream here. First off, we have DJ Smith, who was the founding president of the board of directors for Lost&Found from 2010 to 2014. Then we have Denny. I'm ashamed. I should have asked you your last name, how to pronounce it right, because I don't know you as Meyerink, and I'm embarrassed. But Denny is the one who founded the SDSU chapter back in 2012 to 2014. Then we have Elliott. Elliott is the founder of the DSU chapter and current Chief Tech Officer for Lost&Found. And he also gets a lot of messages from me saying, Elliott, I broke it, fix it. And then lastly, we have Anna Hieronymus, who is a current board member, and she's been on the board since 2015. So welcome, everyone. It's so good to have you all here.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Yeah. I gave a quick little intro to you fine folks about who you are and what your experience is here. So why don't you just take a second and tell us, what some of your journey has been with Lost&Found, what made you get involved, and then we'll go into some questions. And before we do that, anyone watching now, if you have any questions or comments, post them in the Facebook comments. We'll bring them up into the stream, and we'll ask these wonderful people these questions. So DJ, why don't you start? Why don't you tell us about your journey with Lost&Found briefly?
Goodness. So my journey with Lost&Found started a little bit, about 2 years before it became an official nonprofit. It was 2008, and every year there's an organization called To Write Love on Her Arms, and they work with suicide prevention down in Florida. And every year they have a Write Love on Your Arm to show you support people who are struggling with mental health and suicide ideology. And they made an event on Facebook talking about doing this. And of course, I had said I was attending, and there were naysayers in the chat going, oh, this does nothing. If you really want to make a difference, you'll do more than write love on your arm. And myself and a gal named Kayla were arguing with them. As we know, arguing with strangers on the internet gets you so very far.
It works really well.
Of course, why wouldn't it? And so the two of us decided that, there is more that can be done to really make an impact here in the Midwest. So we started another Facebook group that was really dedicated to the micro level, doing things daily or weekly or monthly that make an impact on someone's mental health and their self-esteem and their well-being. And 2 years later, this small Facebook group had kind of exploded from a couple hundred people that I knew locally and that Kayla knew in Michigan up to 1,100 people just seemingly overnight. So we made it into I made it into a school project that won a national award. And from there, that's really when I brought together Eric Mucky and a few other people to create Lost&Found.
Awesome. Eric Mucky, I've heard that name before.
Yeah.
Weird.
Wonder where I've heard his name.
I'm sure we'll see him in about 20 videos today. It's fine. Next, Denny, why don't you share a little bit about your experience, your journey with Lost&Found?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to think of the exact details of how everything panned out, but I was talking to Eric. We've been friends, since high school and even junior high, actually, I think. And so it's been quite a while and quite a journey for us. But as I entered into my freshman year at South Dakota State, I was just noticing a lot of students struggling with mental health and not feeling like they had adequate resources. And so as I was talking to Eric, we decided to go ahead and establish a chapter at SDSU, and it's just been a beautiful journey to see kind of how that's blossomed and how we've been able to support that university and be a resource for students, especially as I started to work with residential life to see an even bigger need and how we can impact some of those students, and how we can help be an opportunity for students who maybe aren't struggling with mental health themselves, but they want to help those that are. And so we started our SDSU chapter, and it's just been incredible to see how it's grown and all the different activities. And it's kind of bittersweet too, to be able to see some of the events that we started from the ground up are still happening today.
Elliott, why don't you share some of your journey?
Yeah, so I mean, I started with Lost and Found. I had met DJ through Student Senate. Just like many campus leaders, we were all wearing multiple hats and trying to do multiple things. But I was also one of the target audiences for Lost and Found. Right, in late high school and early college, I struggled a lot with depression and anxiety, and I hid that a lot from everybody else. We kind of put on this different face, especially when you're trying to be a campus leader and be a role model for students. A lot of times you just you put all of your personal struggles to the back, and that's really kind of what pushed me to get into Lost and Found even more. DJ is a great guy, and I knew him and Eric through Student Senate, like I said, and I was like, this is a great organization to get involved with, and maybe it'll help me along the way. And it certainly did. So that's I owe a lot to Lost and Found and to where the organization has come.
Awesome, thank you, Anna. You were my last to introduce, so you're the last one to go here, but you'll be first for the next one, so be wary.
And I'm just looking at this group, and I think I've been a part of Lost and Found for the least amount of time. I'm talking amongst a group of complete OG, the original group who took part and really established a lot of the foundational elements of Lost and Found back in college. I picked up kind of Lost and Found in 2015, and so I'd been out of college. Eric and I had been for a year. And so I think, I loved your point, Elliott, about being the target audience, because I wasn't involved in Lost and Found in college, and I probably should have been. I was, the overachiever in many extracurricular activities, and I think I really could have used Lost and Found as a conduit and a safe space for me to kind of have that just self-assessment and self kind of identity. I feel like college students, when they're overextended in extracurricular activities, derive a lot of fulfillment from the activities that they're in, and they don't take a lot of space for themselves, or I certainly didn't, to sit and assess my mental health and how I can best put my best foot forward. So that was why, I was a year out of college. Eric calls me up and he's like, hey, I've got this Lost and Found thing. We're kind of young kids, green behind the ears, right out of college. How can we take this and make this a scalable, legitimate nonprofit where we can continue, even if we've left the college sphere? How can we continue to make impact on those collegiate communities?
That's awesome. And I do want to say, if anyone who's watching right now, if you haven't picked up on it, Lost and Found started with a bunch of as you just said, Anna, wet behind the ears college students, but people who have passion, people who wanted to make a difference. And I think back to myself at age 18, and that was probably not the case for me. In fact, I feel super duper old with this group because 3 of you I know for sure were students at universities I worked at. I laughed yesterday because I hired Denny as a tutor once upon a time. That's a whole nother story. I'm ancient. It's fine.
Full circle, for sure.
Full circle. Yes. It's very interesting though. And I think that's just one of the things that makes the impact of Lost and Found so great, is because it's started from a space of need. It started from a space with people in that they're in the midst of it. You understood what those needs were for young adults, because you all still are, but you were very much in the that realm of like, hey, we're in the mix here. How do we help others there? So and I'm going to bounce it right back to you here, but you are being the, as you said, the newest to the crew here. What are some of those milestones that you've experienced, that you've seen achieved during your time with Lost and Found? And that'll be the same for all of you. Just, it's coming back.
Definitely. So I actually went back in our Google Drive with the board of directors folders, and I went back to 2015 when I started. And my first board meeting I'm not here to embarrass anybody, but I just love seeing how far truly the organization has come. So some of our to-dos from 2015 was to buy t-shirts. I see Elliott with that fancy logo that we worked very hard on to talk through. We were tasked with creating a Lost and Found retreat at the time. We wanted a chapter retreat for our communities at SDSU, and DSU. So we put that on. It was Kelsey Butke, Elliott, Eric Mucky, myself, and we worked with the current college members to do a retreat in January of 2016. Also in 2016, we had done a huge fundraiser, which we were very excited about, and a lot of work had been put into that. That was the Ugly Sweaters for Survivors Party. And fundraiser event. It was a joint collaboration with the Survivors Joining for Hope organization. And it was on the west side of Sioux Falls, and we worked very hard for it. It was this, it was in December, and it was a terrible winter storm. I mean, just like ice storm. It was so bad. We worked so hard. We were responsible for recruiting like 6 volunteers each, and we had these goals set, and then the storm came, and it was just did not go as well as we had planned, but the effort was there. Also from 2015, we had just some discussions about a 501c3 renewal, where we were working to get that renewed so that we could look towards funding. And then also on the programming side, we were just in a lot of discussion about maybe that switch from, yes, we wanted to be within the foundational part of the organization, we wanted to be suicide and depression awareness. And so we were trying to kind of expand that programming so that it was both proactive and, kind of that reactive nature. So we wanted to really get into the proactive side of how do we also create a safe space for people to focus on their mental health before it should get to suicidal ideation and thoughts of depression, and how can we focus on positive programming so that it's not always like a heavy kind of area. And that's where I think that true switch recently, I forget the year, but it was kind of that switch to resilience and that focus on resiliency for self, community, and others. That to me was just a really great kind of segue into a lot of the programming and the research that we've been doing in the past few years. I also had to text Eric on this. Another big milestone was our first hire. We had, a first like paid and unpaid hire. Eric is the first hire. And I think that's so cool that, he's the executive director now. And that just is a huge full circle for him, I'm sure. But then we also had, Nick Bradfold, who was our, I think, vice president or president. He was kind of our like unofficial first hire. And I just think it's so cool. In 2015, Eric was just always talking about the vision, and we're going to have this hierarchy, and we're going to have these, this director of development. We have this director. He had the whole vision always. And I was just overwhelmed because I'm like, Eric, I haven't even posted this week on social media channels. Like, I don't even know what we're doing. How many members do we have? I mean, I feel like I was kind of the black hat, and Eric always just had the vision. And I'm looking at 2020 and I'm like, Eric, like, this is happening. Kudos, kudos team. So I'll stop talking. I'll let others go, but just a few milestones and points of reflection that I wanted to share.
That's awesome. Elliott, why don't you, we'll just go around the circle, and then we're going to throw, next question, I'm just going to let it be free range. We're not going to, whatever.
So I'll expand a little bit on Anna's because, Anna and I were there for a lot of that. I think obviously the one of the biggest milestones for the organization was college graduation, right? Like all of us were in college, and that made it hard to do and focus on the organization when you're trying to just graduate and get a job. Let me clarify, a job that actually pays the bills. So it's an important aspect. So we had graduation, and then once we were no longer, myself included, part of the chapter, the university chapter, then it was a natural transition to kind of move towards the board. And we did that. We started meeting in Sioux Falls. We were joking yesterday. I think some of the funniest milestones is the progression of our meetings. They kind of started at my apartment on South Side Sioux Falls, and then they moved to my apartment on North Side Sioux Falls, and then they moved to the bakery when there was a place for us where we actually had an office. We were so excited we had an office in Sioux Falls, and then the bakery closed, and then they moved to South Side Sioux Falls again, and it's just been this nice big cycle. And now with COVID, of course, all of our meetings are virtual, so it's one way or another. I think that was a kind of a funny milestone throughout the time. But then another big component that Anna kind of pointed to was this progression, right? The organization was really focused on suicide prevention, which I definitely think is a valiant cause, and one that's near and dear to my heart. But a lot of the board kind of came up and said, we should be taking a more proactive approach. We should be looking at holistic mental health, and not so much a reactive approach, like Anna mentioned. And that's really when the organization started to shift. Again, we were joking yesterday. We talked about how we went through the mission, vision, values, and we did that almost every single year. And there was a very cyclical concept, right, where we kept kind of spinning our wheels, where we felt a little stuck. And then when that holistic mental health shift happened, that's when the organization kind of really, took off. We realized, okay, there's so much more that we can do with a holistic mental health approach, and being proactive than always trying to be reactive. So I think those were some of the largest milestones from when I was involved in the org.
Awesome. Thank you, Elliott. Denny, what about you?
I have like 5, so I'll try to be selective as best I can so I don't take up the whole time. One of the biggest things that my VP and I wanted to do, Kelsey Becky, we really wanted to try and not showcase Lost and Found, but do something to get people's attention. When we first started as an organization, we were very small. It was just a little group of warriors that we had that were trying to do as big of an impact as we could. And it was coming up on Suicide Awareness Day, and so we wanted to do something on campus visually that would really impact students. And so I was talking with my mom, and we were racking around ideas as best we could, and we decided we wanted to put flags in an area on campus to represent the number of students that die by suicide every year. And I remember Kelsey and I going from hardware store to like Baumgars and Menards, and we were asking for white flags, and these people thought we were nuts. But we worked really hard. We found all the flags we could, and worked with the university. And it was a very odd request, like, hey, can we put hundreds of flags in the ground? Like, we won't ruin anything. And it was a very odd request, but we explained the why and the intention. They're like, yep, you go for it. Do what you got to do. I could have sat there all day outside of the student union at SDSU and just watch people's faces. As at first they're like, what is this construction going on? And then they sit and read, and you could just see the impact it had for them to really take in, like, every single one of those flags represents a human life. And that just instilled such a passion in Kelsey and I. Like, if our efforts can just remove even one of those flags next year, it's all worth it, right? And it's so amazing and incredible to see that that is still a thing they do on campus. They still have the same white flags. I'm sure some of them have no idea who I even am, which is the whole purpose, right? It's about awareness, and it's about doing something as an organization, not doing something as a person. I didn't want to leave campus with them being like, oh, that flag project, that was Denny's. Like, no, that's not the point. The point is, what can we do to reduce the number of those flags that are there and to help people have resources and that kind of thing. So for me, that was just such a vivid memory. And I still have that picture in my phone that we took, and our little picket signs that we put in there of Lost and Found. And we had so many people coming up and asking us about our organization after that and how they could help. We had an article in the Collegian. And so I think it just really got us going as an organization, and as a student chapter mostly, honestly. But it's great to be able to have those kind of memories and to hopefully make a difference using some things like that.
That's awesome. And DJ, you've been, well, you are the, to use Anna's words, the original OG of this. So you've seen lots of stuff. This is a vision that you helped develop. So I'd love to hear, I'd love to hear your take. What are some things that you've seen achieved over the years here?
every time someone spoke, I was like, oh, I need to go back to that. And now I'm lost because there's just been so much change, really, from really what Elliot and Anna were talking about, from that micro level to that macro level, really going towards resilience rather than focusing on suicide prevention after the fact, all the way to what Denny was saying, where this is just so much bigger than us, and we really want this impact to be not what we did, but what the organization did. And I think all of that is incredibly important. Um, big, it's really hard for me to think about like what the large achievements were, because when we first started, I don't even know if that school project counts as lost and found necessarily, but as soon as that happened, I had spoken with Eric Mucky and a few other people. I was like, okay, this happened. I want to do something more with this project. And that really, with Eric and a few other people, is what started Lost and Found. We go back and talk about creating the mission and the values and rethinking about it every single year. Finding a name that would fit was also a challenge. And I am grateful that we did settle on Lost and Found. And the name Lost and Found for me really creates this spectrum of mental health well-being that we can probably discuss a little bit later. The inception of the USD chapter was really cool, just seeing so many people come together in that first meeting and say, okay, we're here, we want to make a difference. What do we do? Because let's be real, when you are 18 years old and you're like, hey, I have an idea and we can do something great. Okay, now how do we take that idea and we make something sustainable out of it? And there's a gal named Morgan who really led USD's Lost and Found chapter, and she did amazing stuff with every year a Battle of the Bands that raised money for Lost and Found with a local band who was impacted by a suicide. Another big thing was working with Elliott. Again, student leaders run in small circles, and finding out Elliott was doing stuff that wanted to have an impact with Lost and Found was awesome. Working with Elliott in student government, even outside of Lost and Found, to impact policies to help students with their mental health was, I would argue, a milestone that would not have happened had we not had the passion from Lost and Found.
That's awesome. And I think it's important to note that, we, unfortunately, I think we can all, I know all of you, but I think anyone watching this, the unfortunate thing is I think we all know someone or have been connected to someone who's committed suicide. And we know that that's a reality. That's an unfortunate reality. Let's be honest. But we all understand that sense of loss, and we all understand the space that we're in. And so, as you were talking, Anna and Elliot, and specifically about that shift from into resilience, that shift into preventative. I think that's a huge piece, because you all had that vision. I want to also just congratulate you all again. Being 18 and kicking that off, you have passion and fire and energy that a lot of folks, lose in life, and you took it, harnessed it, and roped it into creating this organization, which I obviously think is pretty darn neat, because it's where I'm working. Obviously, it's a part of the mission. It's this passion, and it all developed from the work that all of you have helped lay. But I think it's important to know that we shared some awesome milestones, but it's time to maybe get let's get into it a little bit here, and just let's be honest about what were some of the things that were hard. What were some of the challenges that you all faced? Because I'm sure people want to know what some of the, we can talk about our successes all the time, but the journey comes in the hardship sometimes. So I think it'd be great to hear some of those. And Elliot, I saw you unmute yourself real quick, but so did Denny. So I'm gonna shut up and let you do it.
I mean, who's starting?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah. Well, DJ, you can. Why don't you lead us off?
I think we had a really good conversation about this. The Nathan, Denny, Elliot, and I really recently, because you don't start an organization like Lost and Found without having issues of your own. And a big thing for me, and I wrote a blog post about this. I haven't shared it yet. I wrote a very personal blog post about struggling with mental health myself and espousing these values that we need to really reduce the stigma surrounding mental health, where at the same time I was unwilling to talk about my own struggles. And like I felt like a hypocrite. I felt like a fraud, and I think it really drove a wedge between myself and the organization. And for several years, I carried around this feeling of what could I have done differently, and I don't know that I could have. And I know that because of the conversation we had just 2 days ago. That just you know, we're young kids and we have feelings, and our feelings are valid, and we want to make a difference, but it's so hard when you have all of that going on at the same time. And it's really easy when you are struggling with things like depression and things that you are struggling with through anxiety, and being able to trust other people when you are leading an organization with your peers and your friends and your mentors. And I wish I could have asked for help a lot more often than I did. And I'm very thankful for the people who are still working with Lost and Found that have really been able to take this vision and bring it to life and build upon it. But one of the issues, I think, being in college, not having someone full-time dedicated to Lost and Found, and struggling with your own mental health and learning about resilience, not even considering resilience when you're thinking about the mission until years after the inception of the organization, I thought was a challenge that I held on my own. And it was humbling, and it was it made me think twice to hear that I wasn't the only person who had these thoughts and had these struggles.
I mean, I think it's important to note too that depression, anxiety, mental health looks different for every person, right? And every person reacts to those stressors in different ways. Myself, I sacrificed friendships and relationships and put everything into work. Work as a student leader, work in Lost and Found, work with my employer, and put everything else on the back burner. And until I got help and recognized what was going on in my life, you know, that was my life. And I just think that no one person is at blame or at fault for anything that happens in any organization when especially there's so many contributing factors. Our age and inexperience was a large one, right? So I am so proud of where the organization is today. But we all know that without the vision of multiple 18 to 20-year-olds, you know, it wouldn't be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think where we were at our different points in life, and even throughout the years of, you know, this organization developing, we've all had to take kind of a step back at times and that kind of thing. And not just for mental health struggles ourselves, but maybe even just life. You know, all of us dealing with college and trying to find jobs and that kind of thing. We've all had to kind of have each other's back and take different turns at trying to lead this organization. So it's wonderful to see that we have dedicated resources and people now to continue that and to help support that. I think one of the biggest struggles for me was kind of the stigma of getting people to participate in this organization. And that's kind of twofold. I think they felt they either needed to be really well versed in mental health issues and be almost a professional on that side of things. Or on the flip side, they felt they needed to have everything all together to be able to help with Lost and Found. And that's the most beautiful thing I've seen, is that that's completely untrue. We have such a wide spectrum of people participating. We have people who maybe have never really had an honest conversation about mental health struggles with anyone before, but they want to help regardless. And we have people who are in the thick of it and are really struggling with various issues with their family members or their friends are, and they just need resources and support and someone to talk to. And it's been wonderful to see how we can support such a wide spectrum of people and where they're at in life. And so it's good to see us overcoming that, but I do think that's the stigma we're going to continue to face as an organization is just that transparency with where people are at, and that you're all welcome regardless of where you are at with those struggles.
Well, and I remember, and Anna might feed off of this, but I mean, I remember right before kind of this organizational shift happened. I mean, just procedural stuff was a struggle for us, right? The national 501c3, we filed that 3 different times. The first time it got sent back for changes. And, that was like, it was our first time. We'll try again. It'll be okay. We filed it the second time. And when it came back the second time, it was like, it was a struggle, and it was hard to feel defeated when all you're trying to do is help. And, if you don't, dot the right I or cross the right T, procedurally, it just sets you back. So we, filed the third time, and that third time got accepted. But, just things like that, that are always just kind of the world pushing back. So
not only that, the first one we were given the wrong paperwork for the 501s. That was months of, okay, we've got all the stuff. Oh, no, we don't.
Yep.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that procedurally. And I guess to the heart of what you guys are saying too, it was this protection of personal boundaries. And I think in college, I had no ability to derive my own personal boundaries because I always just felt this impetus to want to push my efforts to the limit. I wanted to just do my best in a lot of different avenues. And so as we kind of migrated from the collegiate space to board members, and we're still, like Elliott mentioned, procedurally, we're trying to support our current chapter members. And because we're no longer in college, but we're trying to support them the way you guys were collegiate members and you were leading this Lost&Found organization. And so it was like, how do we pass the torch while also respecting their personal boundaries, while also respecting mine? When, I'm a board member, but we all have full-time jobs and we're trying to meet, weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly. And we're still trying to, at the time I was operations and marketing. So I worked with Kelsey with some of the programming. She worked directly with the different chapters, just with reporting and to see how they were doing. But it was like, how do we become the umbrella organization? And how do we create this protocol while also supporting the other chapters? And I think it just goes down to boundaries. And that was probably the biggest challenge is, up until we could have enough funds to hire staff to really move forward with the vision and the mission, it was like, how do we make this float? And it's just amazing to kind of reflect 5 years later and just see this happening. It's just incredible.
I think that Anna brought up a really good point. One of the biggest struggles for this organization, especially as a young org, was almost the chicken and egg scenario, right? We knew that we needed to fundraise to get money, but we needed money to be able to put on programming and fundraising. I just have to send a huge shout out to any of our donors that might be watching this morning, because seriously, without our donors, our corporate sponsors, we would not be anywhere where we are today, right? The gifts that have been given to Lost&Found over time have really enabled us to actually do our vision and our mission. Hiring Nathan, hiring Eric, having full-time staff. That is the biggest thing, I think, from a milestone perspective, because without full-time staff, I mean, Anna, you moved, I moved, right? Like, life happens, our personal lives and our employment happen. And so a lot of us that started in Sioux Falls and started with this core group no longer live in Sioux Falls and support the organization remotely.
I remember one of our very first fundraisers that we did at SDSU was the 5K with the Helpline Center, and that just led to a really great partnership. But we got done with the first one and we had raised almost $8,000, and we were so excited. And then Kelsey and I looked at each other and went, crap, what are we supposed to do with this now? Or like, what, we
Now
gotta use
what?
it, right? We have to put it towards something. We can't just say, thanks for your money, but we don't know what to do, right? And so it's really wonderful to be able to give back not only to the Helpline Center, but to South Dakota State, and to be able to see those dollars used. And some of the funding we were able to use early on helped us to bring in the Helpline Center and give our team members some training on some suicide prevention tactics and some capabilities to spot mental health struggles early on. And I think that just gave our group the confidence we needed to, understand that, no, we're not going to be professionals. We're not psychiatrists, like we're not medical professionals in the mental health industry, but we have the tools to be able to help from a student perspective, from a friend perspective, and we can actually, be a bridge between just an average Joe student or someone who is struggling and the mental health professionals. And so those dollars were used so wonderfully, and to be able to also help, the foundation get up and running as well with some of those dollars. So yeah, we absolutely appreciate every donor that has come through our doors, whether it's $1 or, X number of dollars. They're all being put towards good use and will continue to do so throughout the future.
Just rewinding here a lot, both to the milestones and obviously, thank you so much for the donors that have kept Lost and Found afloat for so many years. One of the big things we used to do at one point, we were making bracelets out of beads. Like, I'm not even kidding you. We had Lost and Found bracelets that we were giving away to people. I did a lot of public speaking for Lost and Found early on. The farthest I went, I think, was St. Louis is anyone familiar with FCCLA? So I was, if you're from the Midwest, you probably have heard of FCCLA, but I would speak at FCCLA events from in St. Louis and South Dakota and Sioux Falls. I would go to high schools. Our first big donation was when Eric Mucky and I went to speak at Sammy Zoss, another student leader and someone who was involved with Lost and Found. We went to her high school and they gave us, I think it was $500. And we've had some significant donations, and even now the organization has seen some pretty significant donations, and I'm sure more will continue to come. But at that time, it's like, okay, we have $500, kind of like what Denny said, right? Like, what do we do now? It's always been, I think we've done a good job, whether that's making shirts for the website or doing marketing campaigns. Every dollar makes a huge difference, and it always has.
Yeah, and I just want to echo what you all have said here just briefly and give a shout out to all the people who've walked alongside this organization. We work with some great organizations in our community. We have some of those folks coming on at noon here, or at 2, not noon, that's a different one, at 2 today. But you mentioned the Helpline Center. They've been around with our crew for a long time, and we're in this space together. And so I want to give a shout out to all those people who partnered with us in the past, and once again, like you said, to our donors, because we're a nonprofit. Yeah, you don't we don't move forward without support, without funding, and we try to do everything we can to make our programming accessible and free, as best we can. And I'd feel remiss if I didn't take a quick second here to just toss this up. We are in the midst of our 10-year campaign here, our $10,000 for 10 years, 10K for 10. And we have some great matching donations. So if you're interested, and you're watching this, and you want to donate $1 or, more than that, is, I'll take $1. I'll take, whatever we can bring in. But at the end of the day, this is going to go back to our chapters and our programming initiatives. So, you touched on something really important, I think, there, that we can't do. I like that chicken or the egg statement. Like, yeah, we want to do these programs and we need to fundraise to do that, but we don't have money to do the fundraising to do the program to do that. So it's a crazy cycle. But we've been very blessed to have a lot of people walk alongside this organization. We're very grateful for that. As I segue off of that, I'd love to hear something. Well, anything from any of you, really. But what are some things that maybe surprised you about your time with Lost and Found, or maybe it was something that you didn't expect to get out of this organization, but you did.
I guess I'll go first. And I think everybody can pretty much echo this sentiment, right? Again, I started with Lost and Found when I was having my own struggles with mental health. And Anna kind of mentioned this almost like self-insight and self-realization that, I'm not walking this path alone. There are other people. And that feeling that, nobody should feel like they're alone on that walk. So for me, it was really just that almost like awakening that, I'm not alone. I do have people that can help. Other people are going through the same things as me. And really taking those and focusing that effort back into Lost and Found.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think like humans at many times in our lives, there's like a sense and a feeling of brokenness, and that we are connected in kind of that brokenness. It's like no one has to go at it alone, has been a really important realization for me. And I guess the other one is just the one thing that surprised me that Lost and Found has given me after talking amongst ourselves with just all of the ebbs and flows of this journey is just how much of a stable piece it's been in my life. Since 2015, I married a guy in the military, and we have moved like 3 or 4 times. So every year I feel like we're in a different place. And so the fact that I can always kind of come back to board meetings and to the same community and just to see how far we've progressed, it's been like one of the most stable things in my life, which is just funny to admit, but happy to be here. Very grateful for the organization.
I feel like there's been a very smooth transition so far with this conversation, but I think stability is an incredibly important thing that we've all gotten out of this. If you would have told me in 2012 that a lot of the people that I was working with, I would still have a connection to 8 years later, I suppose I wouldn't have been incredibly shocked, but the way we are connected is much different than I would have thought. We all grew up with the stereotypes and the stigmas of this is how you are supposed to be if you are X, Y, and Z. And growing up as a male person in the Midwest who is not straight, to be frank, you hear you don't have feelings. You have to keep this to yourself. You have to keep this bottled in. You're not allowed to show how you feel. And Lost and Found has always been a place where it is okay to open up a little bit. And even though that's something I struggled with, without that struggle in my life early on, without Lost and Found having an impact on me, I would not be able to reach out to Elliott, reach out to Eric. I would love to reach out to Denny and then Nathan a lot more than I do. That's on me. But I feel so incredibly comfortable. Oh, whatever. I feel so incredibly comfortable speaking with the people in my life that are a part of this organization. I think that's fantastic.
I think for me, it's given me a purpose and a home. Not to sound too cheesy, but I think in the sense, kind of like Anna and Elliott have said, people deal with stress differently. They deal with mental health struggles differently. I suffer from really severe anxiety. And so for me, the best thing is to keep busy within limits, I've learned, thanks to Lost and Found. But for me, it gave me a way to help people when I didn't know always how to help myself. And so that purpose there and to be able to feel like I'm doing something for others while still doing something for myself, I mean, you can't put a price tag on that. And a home in the sense that we're trying to normalize talking about struggles with mental health. I can't say that, when I was just getting out of high school and going into college that I would comfortably say, like, I struggle with anxiety. Like, that's not something that I even probably identified at that time. And it wasn't something that I really wanted to talk about because I didn't know how. And so for me to now use that, not necessarily as a platform, but that's an identifier, and I will label myself with that proudly because it's a big part of who I am. And I don't think if I didn't have Lost and Found in my life, I don't think I'd ever feel comfortable labeling myself, let alone saying that's just kind of something I embrace now.
And I would say, oh, sorry, Elliott, you talk.
No, you're good. No, I just wanted to kind of circle back on something DJ said. DJ brought up geography, which I think is a huge component of what Lost and Found is. DJ brought up a great point that with the geography of Lost and Found, we all grew up in the Midwest, and the certain stigmas that are associated with Midwest living are completely different when you go someplace else. So I think a large component of Lost and Found is dealing with the stigma, and its home base of Sioux Falls is so perfect, because it just seems like people in South Dakota just don't talk about their feelings, the stigmas, mental health in general. It's always a struggle. And then you look at some of the other places in the United States, typically larger cities and on the coast, but it's just a much more common thing to talk about. It's okay to not be okay. And that's something that, we're really pushing for in the Midwest to change that perception.
Yeah, you're still muted, Nathan.
Oh, that's embarrassing. That's terribly embarrassing.
I thought it was going to be me, so.
Well, it's fine. I was going to say, when you mentioned community and geography, I think that's really fascinating because I'm the newbie to this crew, and I'm fine with that. But I've noticed just in our time together as we prepped for today, just how it was like none of you skipped a beat when you connected. It was like you hadn't been separated. It's hilarious as you mentioned geography, Elliott, because we have our own private chat going here, and DJ's in Seattle, Anna's in Miami, Denny and I are in Sioux Falls. We're like we're going coast to coast in like a line. It's pretty funny if you think about it. And it's like literally Anna and DJ, you probably couldn't be further away in the United States unless one of you was in Hawaii or Alaska, but those are not contiguous. So
literally, like East Coast to West Coast, like the spectrum could not be much farther
Northwest,
away.
Southeast. Let's figure out the mileage after this.
Well, I have you all answer the question. I'll do a Google Maps. It'll be real fun. So we are kind of nearing the end of our time here together, and to wrap it up, I think I'd love to hear from all of you. If you could it's a twofold question, so it's two things to remember. I'm so sorry. It's real difficult for me. But if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be? And then also, what was maybe one of your favorite memories? What was one of your favorite memories within your time with Lost and Found? I know that one might be tricky. They both are tricky, but I think that vulnerability, the power of stories, we've talked about that's gonna, that makes this even more real when we get to hear from all of you. So advice, memories.
I'm going to go first so I don't forget both of the questions. I think my biggest thing as far as advice goes is don't worry about the numbers and what the future holds. I had no idea it would become what it did, and that it wasn't just all on me and it wasn't about me and that kind of thing. But we spent so much time. I think there were meetings where it would just be my VP and I would be like, where the heck is everybody? Like, what's going on? What are we doing here? Is this even worth it? That kind of thing. And so I think I wish I could have told myself, like, just keep pushing forward, and you have supporters, whether they're in your meetings or not, or whether they're, watching videos or not, or engaging, people out there do actually care about it. And it was a purpose that was absolutely worth it. And then the memories aspect, this is such a strange roundabout story. So when I was in college, there was this Facebook group that was like, I think Jackrabbits Anonymous, and all these colleges were doing it. And a lot of people were going on there and posting like, oh, the boy walking down the street with the brown hair, you're really cute, kind of thing, right? But there was it was a strange outlet for people to really talk about their mental health struggles in an anonymous platform, which was fairly new at that time. And it hit us like a wave. It was crazy. We all of a sudden were having messages with the admins of these groups, and it was phenomenal to see people tagging Lost and Found and suggesting people leverage them as a resource. We would have people tag us in these posts. I'm like, I have no idea who you are. How do you even know who we are? Like, I've never seen your name, But I appreciate it. Like, thanks, stranger, for, you know, sending people our way. And I think that, like, I just have goosebumps right now talking about it, because it just was not about us. It was about our purpose and our organization. And there's these people we've never met before that knew that that purpose was worthwhile. And that was just one of the coolest memories for me to see, and to be able to, you know, just feel supported and feel loved, and feel like we truly were fulfilling our purpose at our campus.
All right, I'll go next. For me, I think the piece of advice, certainly it's something that I've said multiple times so far, but the component of it's okay to not be okay, right? I think the biggest thing for me is if I could give myself that advice, 8 years ago, that would have helped me immensely, right? And it's one thing from having somebody say it to you, but it's a completely different thing to live it. So I think that would be the advice. And then the memories, there's so many great memories, right? I have a great memory, and then I'm going to go a little bit darker. So one of the greatest memories that I have is right when we started the DSU chapter. We had DJ up who kind of gave a conversation with the students, and I handed at the end DJ this gigantic check. That was fantastic. I love that memory, because he's like, what am I supposed to do with this? So that was kind of fun.
This doesn't fit in my
yeah,
wallet.
right. How do I take this to the bank? And then the other memories, they're really kind of fuel to keep us going. So I specifically remember meeting with parents whose child had committed suicide. I remember going to funerals of kids that had committed suicide. Those are the really difficult memories, but they're the memories that fuel us to go out into our communities and fight this fight. And so for me, those are really important, just as important as the good memories.
Awesome.
Both of you just saying these things really brought back a lot of memories and moments that, I remember the USD confessions page, and now just thinking back to Lost and Found being tagged and being able to be a resource in that way. It was a good thing, even if the confession pages themselves were a little bit toxic. There were moments in there that people were able to be a resource. I think a piece of advice I would, again, going third, it's really hard to say advice that I would give myself that hasn't already been said, but you aren't alone. It's okay to ask for help are two very big things. One of the ways my anxiety would often hit me is I would feel like I'm just in everything on my own, and I would be too afraid to ask for help. And obviously that's not true. And it's something we all learn at our own pace, but it's something that I probably should have heard much, much sooner in my life. One memory I have, again, going off of Elliott, sometimes it feels a little bit dark, but you see the light at the end of the tunnel when a student at the University of South Dakota lost his life to suicide, seeing the entire enormous community come together for a candlelit vigil. And not only that, creating an event afterwards in his name to raise awareness and funds to that battle for suicide prevention with an organization that was outside of Lost and Found. So a lot of what we do, and a lot of it's hard to put into words, I think, at this point. A lot of what we do is to make it so we don't have to do fundraising and awareness the way that we've done in the past. And it is a reminder that the greater community is there to support organizations like Lost and Found. And it's also a reminder of why we do what we do. And maybe not the 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 happiest memory I have had, but it's definitely one that made a huge impact on me.
I'm realizing I should have gone first because I don't know how I'm going to follow all of you. So, Denny, that was a great decision on your part. One piece of advice that I would have for my younger self is to learn how to create personal boundaries early and often. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. You don't have to be a yes man all the time. Your space is worth protecting. Your no is a full sentence. You should, just that creation of personal boundaries is personally something I still struggle with. It's like, I love being a yes man. I love helping others. I pour into others' cups and then I look at my own and I'm like, what's left? And I think just that mindset would have served me really well to switch that thought process early on. The other piece of advice is to trust the vision. I wish I would have given myself more opportunities to think, what if this works, as opposed to like contingency planning. Like, okay, how do we prevent this from going to the ground? Should not have been as pessimistic as, okay, how do we plan so that when this works, like these are the problems we're going to have. And I do credit Eric Mucky for being that person. And I was kind of the black hat that was like, well, we have to protect this organization. What if it fails next month? And he just had the opposite thinking. I think Elliott and Eric both did great jobs of that when we were post-college. So those are kind of the two pieces of advice. And then I guess the memories when I truly felt that this could be a legacy that would move on past us was in the 2016 chapter retreat. It was, Eric, Elliott, Kelsey Butkey, myself, and then the presidents and the members of each of the 3 Lost and Found chapters at the time. And we had this concept, I took Professor Roach's classes and he talks a lot at USD about living and looking around the lantern. And, there's a lantern in the center of the room and everybody's stories and histories have different perspectives based on like that lantern that you're looking at and how it's impossible to see on the other side of it. So we sat in a circle and we were just talking about kind of that concept and also the concept of being lost and being found. And just being able to have the privilege of creating a safe space for those college members and the board members to sit around the circle and talk about moments when we felt lost and then moments and ways that we feel found, heard, and understood. Just gives me goosebumps thinking about. It's like that's kind of the impact where that was like the light bulb went off about us creating programming that turns into a legacy that can help college students year after year after year, and that it can supersede us. So that was, a very positive memory that I still reflect on and still like so incredibly thankful and happy to be a part of.
That's awesome. And before I end us here, I just wanted to, this is not anything important, but I just thought it'd be fun to pull up here quick because as you talked about it, look at that. 48 hours, 3,300 miles away, but you drive through Sioux Falls. So
the best.
So it's kind of worth it.
It's kind of worth it.
Make a pit stop there.
Yeah.
You only have to drive for 48 hours straight or 24 hours to stop in Sioux Falls. So,
Nathan,
totally
do
worth
you have
it.
Any advice and memories you wanted to share?
Oh, me? No one cares what I have to say.
I care. I care.
I was
just gonna say, I think back to, my time as a student and my time as working with students, because my background is in higher ed. I worked in higher ed for 10 years before coming here, and it's very cool to see. Like I said, I definitely remember several of you being students when I worked at your institution, which, like I said, makes me feel real old. But that's neither here nor there. But it's really great to just see how much of an impact you can make, and knowing that community is there and is ready to be impactful. So I have lots of things I can say, but I know we have some folks who need to get out of here at 10. But I can, if anyone has questions, they want to talk to me or talk to any of these wonderful people, feel free to reach out to us. Hit us up on our social media platforms. You can reach us all at Instagram and Facebook at Resilient Today. We definitely want to connect with you. We want to connect with each other. And I just want to say, thank you again to all of you for the work you did. as we talk about mental health and well-being, this is stuff, resilience, you can learn whether you're 18 or 72. You know, we can learn that and develop that and grow through that. So yeah, I'm so thankful for all of you and the work and the passion that you put into this organization to bring it to today. And just a quick shout out, he couldn't be here with us today, but Eric Mucky, our CEO, he is he's, you know, what, 28, something like that, and he's got the wisdom of someone who's like, you know, 280. It's crazy. Apparently the health of one too. Just kidding. He's fine. He's healthy. He's good. But you know, we're thankful for everyone in this crew. So thank you all so much for being here. And I really, we should have this, something like this again. Keep the conversation going.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, donors. Thank you, original members. This has been an incredible celebration to kick off 10 years.
Yes.
Thanks
so
Absolutely.
much.
This has been so much fun. It's been so great just sharing stories and experiences. Eric, get better. We missed you. Thank you again, Nathan. Thank you, donors. Thank you, other OG people.
All right. Well, we'll see you all. We have something at noon. Come back to Facebook Live right here at noon, and we'll talk about the present, where we're at today. See you then.
Bye.